Hello, everybody. This is Kyle Ellen. How are you? How you been doing? I will introduce myself again. I'm an artist, singer-songwriter, author, and speaker. And today I want to talk about my 8th chapter of my book called Imagine What's Inside. It's an autobiographical self-help format book about music and healing. Every chapter title is exactly the same title of a song. So this chapter is the 8th chapter, and it's called Touch My Eyes, and the song is called Touch My Eyes. So this song is about when, after, and going through the accident we went through as a family with my husband, the effect that it had on our children made me very aware that when a family, any family, goes through an ordeal, not a good ordeal like, oh, we're going to Disneyland, but a serious ordeal. Maybe it's an illness, an injury, maybe there's a flood, a hurricane, God forbid, but just something where the household is like drastically changed in a very short amount of time. Kids are impacted by that very serious way. I mean, not like horrible, not immediate, going to die from it type of thing, but very serious thing that sometimes adults don't realize the amount and to the extent that it does impact on a child's life when there is a huge, intense ordeal that goes on in the house. And I experienced that with both my kids. My older one was 8, almost 9, and it was a lot different kind of a thing for him. But my younger son was 2 and 2 months, and that was hard because you couldn't explain anything. You could try, but how are you going to explain this? And it just didn't translate. And I was so overwhelmed being a caregiver that I had minuscule amount of time with either of my children, but particularly the 2-year-old. The other one, if he needed homework help or something, I had to fit that in my day, along with changing bandages 3 times a day on my husband's wound and bringing anything he wanted to eat or drink to him. But the 2-year-old, after about a year, when my husband was doing better momentarily for a pretty extended time, and he wasn't so critical, I started to realize something's kind of odd or different about my now little over 3 years old, almost 3.5-year-old son. And finally, I realized he's not looking at me in the eyes. He's refusing to make eye contact. No matter how I'm trying to look at him, which way I'm going. And I thought, is he doing that on purpose? Or it took me a minute to realize, like, this is just the new reality. And how long it had been since I had looked him in the eyes, and I realized it's so long I can't really remember it. It has to have been at least 6 months. And I just was so overwhelmed and so busy being a caregiver that I just didn't realize it. And so I was so upset when I finally started to piece this together one day, and I got on my knees and I just tried to say, touch my eyes, look at mommy and all that. And nothing. Everywhere I went to try to touch, make eye contact, he was looking the other way without a doubt. It was just kept going on and on. So I finally sat there and I just prayed, God, help me. I didn't mean to save my husband only to have my youngest son, something be critically wrong with him. And so I just prayed my prayer I made up when I was a caregiver, which was, God, show me the way and God, give me the will. Or I'd say, God, give me the will and God, show me the way. Because that is, if you know the path you need to go and you have the will to go there, you're going. So I sat in just tears coming down, and I looked at my son and I just begged on my knees, just crumpled on the floor, touch my eyes with your eyes, touch my eyes with your eyes, please. And suddenly, after what seemed like eternity, he looked at me in a way that he looked like, you got 2 seconds and 1.5 are gone. And I don't really think anything you're going to say is going to be any good at all. I mean, it was just this glare. And finally, though, he was looking at me, and boy, did I just say, yes, yes, thank you, that's good job, and he touched my eyes, and finally he reached up and actually touched my eyeball, because at first he was thinking that's what it is too. And I said, no, 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 touch my eyes with your eyes. And as soon as possible after that day, when I had that success and I gave him a treat and I praised him so much, and I thought something is not right, because he still didn't like suddenly change and be eye contact all the time. So as soon as possible, I went to the library. I had my mom watch the kids, and I just had already gone through all the psychology books I own, couldn't figure it out, went to the libraries, found the psychology's books on the bottom shelf, and I read and read and read, and I read Environmental Autism finally. And I went, environmental autism? Well, that would kind of make sense, because the household that we lived in changed in one day, from a dad that came home and did like most dads do, you know, and see their kids and, you know, work and, you know, have some dinner with the kids, and it just changed to where Dad was in a bed with his foot 6 feet up in the air and critically injured, and going to doctor appointments 4 hours at a time, and never going anywhere. That was unheard of. The only place was the grocery store, and even that, when I went, I loaded up for weeks at a time, and doctor appointments. So I started to realize finally that made some sense. Environmentally, he was showing signs of autism. So I just kept saying, touch my eyes, because I thought the way to come back is we have to reconnect. And I would say 17 times, and I would be this close, real close to his face, 17 times, touch my eyes. And he'd look at me finally. And this is how we went about our lives. And then little by little, after weeks, it would be 14 and 12 weeks, 12 times of saying to him, touch my eyes. And then little by little, it was less. And then it got down to it was be 3 or 4 times. And once he touched my eyes, I could say anything and we could have a conversation. But then the school system eventually kind of got involved. But before that, I had him at a preschool. And they knew me from my other child. And they knew the type of parent I am. And they knew this is not kind of normal when your child doesn't want to sit at reading time. He wants to be under a table watching from afar. But she said, you know, he's paying attention. So, and he's better than the ones that are sitting right up close. So why not? It's okay. Well, I did take him to get him assessed. And I went to what would have been a very impressive hospital doctor situation, and I picked a female thinking this will be easier. But when I got there, I was shocked, because one of the first things she said after talking to me a little bit and not really hearing me, not really understanding, not when I said I think it's environmental autism, you know. So what the very first test was is to take a glass milk bottle, take a not a paper clip, take a clothespin and drop it, have the child drop it. That used to be done at birthday parties when all the time. And when he did, he flapped like this. Oh, that was it. He's autism. That's autism for sure. He's at least Asperger's syndrome. And I thought to myself, are you joking? Because that was literally how birthday parties went on. And for many years of my life, I've seen that a million times. Kids excited. And plus, I thought, does she not realize Mary Poppins, one of the best things that all the kids, especially the boys, love is when the chimney sweepers dance and they flap like a birdie and dance all around and flap like a birdie. And I don't know if it was a year or when it was, but there was a moment my husband was recuperating. He was watching Mary Poppins repeatedly, that section, and said, we're being birdies. because was like, are you okay? My 3-year-old and dad, and yeah, we're flapping like birdies. So I want to know, do any autism researchers understand that that's a huge thing? And then maybe not all kids know it, but a lot of kids watch Mary Poppins when they're young at some point, and then kids go out and interact with other kids and flap like a birdie, and this shows you're autistic. Man, we need to think about this, because I'm here to declare a new disorder called highly creative disorder. I'm only calling it a disorder because it seems to be that if I look back over things, that the World War II vets came home, got married, had kids, and the kids turned into peace, love in the 60s, and a lot of drugs, and over time, a lot of drugs. But then they also, the boomers seem to have done something else. They seem to have decided that children need labels, all kinds of labels. Whereas back in the day, it would have been one label and it would be hyperactive. Now, it's not just ADD, it's ADHD, it's a million labels. So, okay, boomers, you need a label, and now it's kind of, we pass that down to the next generation. If we need labels, how about a highly creative disorder label? Because a highly creative, right brain dominated person is never going to act anything like a left brain analytical dominated person. And when you say, what does that mean, dominated? Okay, let's pretend you have gloves up here, like Mickey Mouse, and I'm throwing a ball 100 miles an hour, and one of them's going to catch it. Which one is it? Are you more inclined to pick a analytical left brain kind of activity, like accounting? Are you big into numbers? Are you an engineer? Not that you don't ever use your creative brain, but which one are you more likely to feel more comfortable using quicker? Or are you the artist, the dancer, the singer, the songwriter, the creative chef? Are you a sewer, a knitter, a crocheter? And I mean, there's probably a million other creative things I could think of. And it's not like it's all cut and dry, like, oh, well, I never do that. No, I'm sure analytical people are creative a little bit, and creative people are analytical too. But I'm just saying, which one is more dominated, which one is more easily accessed? Because what I started to realize in this journey that I went on, and I've written about in this chapter of my book, is that it wasn't environmental autism, or if it was, which it probably was to a small degree, but it was even more so that my son was a right brain, highly creative child. Not savant. I mean, savant, I see what that's about, but I think it's just extremely gifted. There are savants, but what if you're not quite a savant, but you're just extremely gifted, or highly talented, or great at art? What does that mean? Society thinks you're never going to earn a living, you're never going to get anything, even though there is nothing but signs and signs and signs in society. Musicians, songwriters, dancers, artist type people that are making really good livings. So if you do what you're best at and that's your passion, isn't that a better life than somebody saying, well, you know what, you're different, so I think you're probably autism spectrum, because you aren't in these analytical lines. And so the next thing that happened was I ended up taking him to get assessed, like I said, and they played this bottle game. And then she had a conversation with me, and she kept saying environmental autism would only happen during a war. And I thought about that for a minute, and I thought, she doesn't understand how three-dimensional the wound my husband had, that this is as if he stepped off of a war. The man that helped save him, the head doctor that really knew what to do, spent 5 months in Vietnam and said, my husband stepped as close to a landmine without stepping on one is what his injury looked like, even though that's not what he did. He fell 2 stories. And he's blessed. It's a miracle that he still walks, he still talks, and It's just a blessing for my children, for sure. But the impact on my younger son made me realize, little by little, saying, touch my eyes, and then going to this doctor who said, you couldn't have environmental autism. You have to be in war. Okay, well, I wasn't, and I'm sure he did have a certain degree of it. And then she wanted to look at his heart. She wanted to hear his breathing and all that. And I thought, are you kidding me? Why didn't you do that the minute you showed up? This is a child that's 4.5, and she just was taking too long for a child that age that just got out of preschool who'd rather go eat his little snack and run home and watch his favorite cartoon. So he turned his back to her and looked at the wall and refused adamantly. Absolutely no way was he going to turn around and let her touch and take his shirt off, any of that. And I thought, oh boy. So she finally said, that's it, he's autism. Look at him, look at his behavior. No child does this. No child would do this. And I thought, are you nuts? You raised girls, huh? Because we had a discussion where she said, oh, I have girls and I hardly get to spend any time with them. And I flat out looked at her and said, will you spend an hour with your child today? Maybe reading a book or sitting next to him? She said, are you kidding me? I'll be spending more than an hour. That's terrible. I'll be there like 3 or 4 hours at least, probably 4, you know. And I just thought, I looked at her and said, I have not spent more than 3 minutes with this child once or a couple times a day, changing a diaper or getting his food right there and making him have one bite because he could feed himself. And this went on months and months and months and months and months. 1.5 years. By the time I'd seen her, almost 1.5 years. And she told me flat out, I'll never forget it, if you don't put him on medication right now, by 3rd or 4th grade, he'll be failing and you will have ruined his life. And she said it as stern and adamant as ever. And I just said, okay, I just need to talk to my husband, you know, first. And because I was just stunned that she hadn't heard what I said. I haven't been around this child. We're living in a house with somebody who has like a war wound, shattered calcaneus, shattered heel bone, and you think, I don't know what I'm talking about? I've been living with this child. And I told her I have a master's in psychology. That's what I think it is. So you ought to always make sure you listen to your heart is all I can say to everybody out there, because I took my son, we got back to the car, he asked for his snack. I gave him his snack. He sat right next to me. I was in tears, just in shock, thinking I usually don't not do what a doctor tells me to do. This is my child. This is critical. I have to make the right decision. And what I know is I did make the right decision. I did not put him on medication. It took years to work through the different levels of things that he was going through, from PTSD, from living in a house with a critically injured person and everything that we were going through. Mom just instantly unbonding from him. And, you know, it's so hard when you're thrown immediately into being a caregiver. So it's almost like I want to tell everybody, you know, figure out a plan now. If I can't, you know, how are we going to handle it? Who's going to help with the kids? How are we going to help this? What's the plan? Because I never dreamed that a person I was married to would have an injury that took 3 years. So, but the thing about my son is, then I did take him to a psychiatrist, because the school, the first year in kindergarten, took him in and and gave him special ed type assistance help, not special ed necessarily, but extra help. And it started to upset my son, because he goes, I can never get my work done. They would literally talk about what the work was going to be and then drag him off to teach him other things and then put him back in the classroom. So he was continually feeling like he's falling behind. He can't keep up. He can't. And I realized this isn't good. This is not a good message. Well, I'll work on his behavior issues myself and with my mentor, who was a behavior therapist. So I took my son to her. Week after week, little by little, she gained his trust because he had gotten to a place as a child he just did not trust. He didn't want to look at nobody. He didn't want to trust nobody. It was so ingrained. It wasn't like he was saying it. It was more just the overall thing. And he had a tremendous, tremendous fear about getting his toenails clipped. Like unheard of fear. 3 people to get his toenails trimmed. And that was all coming from this accident. So the psychiatrist that day was hilarious. I asked my behavior therapist, should I be worried? She said, Ellen, do it. Do it. But first she said, bring him here. Let me see him. And now he's like almost 5. So we're thinking before kindergarten, let's see what's going on. And Rue had him take some dominoes. And she gave him a little low table and said, here, you can do whatever you want. These are dominoes that are yours. And then she told me, here, sit here, keep your back from looking at them. Don't look at them. Okay. And I'm not going to be totally looking at them, but I'll be watching. And it didn't take her long. She goes, there's nothing wrong with him. And then she goes, hold on a minute. She asked him, can we move a little bit and go over the couch? He was like, yeah. So we got up, moved farther away. He wasn't clingy. He wasn't trying to be with me, or he was busy, very focused on these dominoes and making different patterns, different animals, because she started asking him, what are you making? And he would tell her. And then he'd say, I'm going to change it. Or she would say, you're changing it now. Yes. And so it was a two-way conversation, but she finally leaned over and told me, Ellen, there's nothing wrong with him. And she said, I'll tell you what he is. He's creative. He's creative. Can't you see it? Can't you see it, Ellen? And then she goes, he's more creative than you. And I thought, that's fine with me, because I love being creative. And if I had a child that was into being creative, that would be very cool. And if they were even more than me, I think that would be awesome. But then she stunned me and said, Ellen, he's more creative after she watched him more and more changing these patterns, moving, changing. And you could see him analyzing, looking at it like he just knew what he was doing. And very much had a perception of what it was he was doing. And she asked him, from time to time what he was doing. And she said, Ellen, he's more creative than you and me put together. And I couldn't believe that, because Rue, my mentor, she could make up a song instantly. It'd be lyrics and melody, a cappella, no problem. Just tell her what subject. She could do it. And her range was wider than anybody you've ever heard. Seriously. And when she went up on a high note, even though she could sing really low, when she went up on a high note, she could sit on it forever and ever and ever and ever. So for her to say that really caught my attention, because I thought, that means he's like unbelievably creative. Like he has a load of it. And so, I said, okay, she goes, take him to the psychiatrist. He'll be fine. And so I thought, all right. So we went to the psychiatrist, very recommended, and all the right degrees and all that. And we came in, the psychiatrist scolded me that not to say one word. Okay, I won't. I was just trying to explain, come in this room, Bryce, sit here, but that's fine. And Bryce, he asked, you have a question? Bryce was like, yeah, I do. And, kind of talking like a 5-year-old would. And he said, oh, what is it? He asked him, anything bothering you? Do you have a question? You have something you want to tell somebody? Yeah. Bryce was more than willing. Brycer, my little Brycer. And he said, why is apple spelled with an A? Why isn't it apple? And why is umbrella, a U? It doesn't sound like a U. It sounds like a maybe. And the psychiatrist was hilariously looking like egg on his face. And then Bryce said, and I have another question. No, this one's even more worse. And the guy was really like, oh yeah? And Bryce goes, I need to know algebra. Can you help me learn algebra? Second grade. My son sitting next to me, second grade, is insisting and he meant it. And the psychiatrist then decides he'll talk to me and wants me to decipher this. And I said, because his older brother, because he thought, do they teach algebra in second grade? I said, no. His older brother, 6 years older, 7th grade level, so he's learning algebra. So Bryce wanted to learn algebra. But he then tells me, no, I don't see any Asperger, autism. I don't actually see anything of anything. He seems like a normal, 7-year-old to me, because now he's 7. And the school was very much telling me in 1st grade and 2nd grade he needed to be taken out of school. I said, no, I'm not doing that. Teach him what you teach him, and I will take him somewhere after school so he can just be with his classmates and flow the same way, and I'll make sure he gets the help he needs. So to hear this psychiatrist tell me there's nothing wrong, I was just like thrilled. I thought, Rue's right. I shouldn't be afraid. But then he says to me, the psychiatrist, but we could try him on a little bit of medication, just a very little bit amount, and see how he does. And I thought, are you out of your mind? A psychiatrist, how many doctors say or know, there's nothing wrong with this kid, but we could try something on him. He wanted to make my son a guinea pig. Okay, I didn't do that. And even though the doctor told me he'd be flunking, the other doctor told me that he was autism, Asperger first, he didn't flunk 3rd or 4th grade. He graduated high school, high B average, B plus average, and he went to University of California, Irvine, so he got into a really great school, go Zots, and he also was excelling in high school. He was in marching band, he was in vocal music, and he was in acting, all 3. I found out that that's almost unheard of. It's very rare. Usually kids just do 1, and sometimes they'll do 2. But he did all 3, and he excelled and got awards in all 3, and he got the Louis Armstrong Award. He's a jazz musician. And I just thought, how could that doctor be so wrong? To say that that's what he was and that he would fail if I didn't put him on medication, but obviously he didn't. He just did things like this during his lifetime. He wasn't quite 2. His birthday is in December, mid-December. And a couple days before Halloween, I'm in my bedroom, and across the hall is my older son. And then Bryce, I was kind of wondering, but then I heard the piano on the other side of my bedroom wall. And I thought, okay, I know where he is. And my piano is the kind of piano I let all kids play my piano. It's the same beat-up piano I had growing up, and it's been a great piano to just let kids mess around with it, get entertained by it. And some of them have really picked up a great interest for it, and some of them just had a really good time when they were young, being able to hit on a piano key. So all of a sudden, I hear a note, like I said, and another note. Oh, okay, that's where he's at. And another note, and another note. And it wasn't too many notes into it, maybe 6, that I went, that's Pink Panther. And I thought, that's got to be his older brother that's 6 years older, because it couldn't be Bryce. That's impossible. A kid that's not even 2 cannot play the piano, right? Well, so I called out Kyle, and then he said, yeah, Mom. And I realized he's in his room still. Who's playing the piano? It's almost Halloween. Maybe, could it be a ghost? Because how can a 2-year-old, not even 2, play a piano? So I went in, I said to Kyle before I went in his room, Kyle, who's playing the piano? It's Bryce. He responded, that's impossible, Mom. So I went in Kyle's room, Kyle Guy's room, and I said, I'm here, and you're standing there. Who's playing the piano? As we're still hearing a very, very, slow version of da-da, 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 da, da, da-da. It's hilarious. It was hilarious. So Bryce has done things that aren't really normal, attracted that's to the arts. He won 3 art awards in elementary school, So what I think is that a lot of kids are being misdiagnosed at a very young age as being Asperger or autistic spectrum disorder, autism. And I'm not here to say that there isn't some people that have autism, Asperger, autistic spectrum or whatever, but I think we need to cut that spectrum in about at least half and realize that half of those kids are misdiagnosed. They're highly creative disorder. They're right brain dominated kids. They do not learn, nor do they develop, progress. They don't do anything like the left brain analytical, like the book. They think outside the box. They take way, way, way more supervision when they're young. If you have a left brain analytical, they want to read. My older son's that. Give him a computer, give him a book, maybe some food. He's happy. He's content. He doesn't want to be in the limelight at all. My highly creative younger son, give him a stage, give him a microphone, give him an instrument. Give him a piece of paper and something to draw on, art, anything creative. He is just taking the ball and he is running down to the goal line. And people want to think normal is like this. No, normal is very wide. Abnormal is just the very farthest parts. So there is abnormal. Let's get real. We all know the worst of the worst people. But just because you're different, just because you flap like a birdie, whoops, almost dropped my camera. So all I'm trying to do is say, if you want to know more, buy my book, read chapter 8, read Touch My Eyes, because you'll see step by step by step what I went through to touch my eyes, to make that eye contact, because I think a reason why these kids, so many numbers are going up in that autism or whatever, is too many parents are doing this. Go out to eat and watch how many families show up. And I'm not talking of teenagers. I'm talking with small kids. No joke. I've seen it and just been in shock. Small kids, and you are on your phone, checking your phone, and they're not taking pictures of the kids. You can tell the difference between that. So, everybody needs to realize how important eye contact is. And everybody needs to realize we need to have a lot more tolerance for differences. And that boys just take longer to develop. They have different interests. They're, more into playing outside and things. So it's not always. There's exceptions to any rule. So let's get real here. But girls, sometimes if they're creative, they're more wanting to sit down and make pictures or dance or whatever. Who knows, but if your child's into cooking, that's, chefs are very creative. So we need to look at our child and realize, and if you have an analytical child, they'll probably want to stay more in one place and be easier to manage, easier to parent. But if you have a highly creative child, you should realize you're blessed. It's not a curse, it's a blessing, just like any child, left brain or right brain, it's a blessing. But they're going to need a lot more oversight, a lot more parenting, a lot more empowering them when they're young to be able to express that creativity that's just abundant in them, that God placed in them. It's not their fault. And help them to be able to express that in a positive direction so that it doesn't go in a negative direction. But if you're ignoring your child, which is what this is, when we don't make enough eye contact, and I don't mean eye contact with your kid like, okay, you're in trouble now. No, that's fine. If you need, kids need to be parented. But there has to be moments where you're actually just hanging out, looking at them eye to eye, listening to them, what they want to say, and just talking like nice, positive kind of things to them and acknowledging that it's nice to be able to, have this moment with you and be able to, talk to you. And, it's a very good thing. And this is a great moment in my life. And, yeah, I feel good when we can just have a moment and check in with each other and just take that energy, that effort. That is what children need, and especially creative children, because they do need help. They need help to paint, to color, to go to maybe dance lessons, or, to buy dance videos maybe, or books on dance, or singing, to take them, to help them to buy an instrument or find an instrument to play, or, they just need oversight. It takes more, and they need more listening. They have creative ideas, and they need somebody they can bounce those ideas off of. So whenever you do decide you're going to have a child, if you haven't already, or if you're young and that's your dream, I want to have a kid, just remember, you may be a right brain creative person, but you might have a left brain child, or you might be a left brain dominated analytical person and you have a right brain creative child. My father was an engineer, started his own business, very analytical, great at math and taxes and numbers and all that. But me, I was creative. I can sing and I'm creative. I do better in any of the creative arts. I mean, I like to dance and I appreciate all the arts. I think it's just amazing that a person, a human being, can create something that's just so beautiful when we see great art, or when we hear a song that just reaches right in and grabs us. So I just want to open up people's eyes, and I want to start the movement for highly creative disorder. Because until we can acknowledge how vast, how big, and how much of an influence that is on a human being, what I see is we don't give enough attention to it in the schools, or in general in society, but in schools. And so highly creative children, that's where their life goals should be, are not getting educated enough towards the life goals they really should be trying to get educated towards, because they're still having to take algebra and harder things like that. And the value systems from elementary, junior high, and high school is like that, way too much. And then people that are highly creative graduate high school, and if they do not take it in a positive direction, and listen to me because this is so important, if you are highly creative and you don't take that in a positive direction, like singing, songwriting, creating a nice exotic dish of food, or create a picture, or 3D art. I love 3D art. But if you don't take your positive creative brain in a positive direction, you will take it in a negative. That is how that works. So if you're highly creative, you need, just like every day you need to eat something, you need to, brush your teeth, you need to make sure every day you're being creative in a positive direction, not a negative. Now you say, what's a negative creative thing? What are you talking about? Well, when somebody goes and commits a crime, it could be creative, but it's negative. When that kid did what he did in the movie theater in Colorado, and then when he booby-trapped his apartment, that's creative. But it's creating chaos. It's creating destruction. It's creating death and harm. So it's negative creating. And drugs is another way of you getting into being creative in a negative direction. But there's other like things that you're doing that it's just negative creating. So whether it's your relationship you're trying to be positive creating instead of negative creating, when you treat each other nice, or some other type of negative creating thing where you're beating yourself up. Nobody has to tell you anything bad to you because you're already in your mind saying it over and over and over. And I've been there and I've done that and I work at it all the time. But when you can be positive creative, you're inspiring yourself. You're saying, come on, man, I'm doing it. Let's go. And, I can do this. And, it doesn't matter if I'm perfect. Just, I get an A. I tell everybody, you get an A just for effort, just for trying. That's called an A for effort. So anyways, like I said, I just hope that people will take me serious because I'm very serious. I lived through this. had a doctor say, put him on medication or he'll be failing. You'll ruin his life. And I didn't do that. I worked behaviors, modification, touching my eyes, I think is huge. It's significant. Go watch everybody in society today for the next few days and see how many times you see people actually looking at each other and how many times they're not really looking at each other. So that's chapter 8. That's Touch My Eyes. I hope that you can pass these words on because I'm mad as hell, like Network said, the movie, and I'm not going to take it anymore. And the idea that I saved my son from what could have been horrible, because I have 2 friends have 40-year-old autism. Children, grown, adult, females, children with autism. And it's a hard burden. But one teacher did tell me that she can teach them anything as long as she sings or she plays music and there's some type of musical element involved. It could be drumming, it could be, she goes, but if I don't have music involved, Ellen, it don't matter. None of them can learn nothing. And I was shocked. I said, are you serious? She goes, I am so serious. I've tried for years now, 7, 8 years, she'd been working with just autism individual kids. And she said, it just never ceases to amaze me. I keep trying, thinking there's got to be a way to teach them that's not a musical way. But she says, as long as I do music, they learn everything. And she goes, they learn it right away. They don't. So what is that about? What is that about? That's because they're highly creative, right brain dominated people, obviously. So we just need to look at that as a key. Not for everybody, but for a lot of kids, when you're raising them, when you wonder, why are they different? How come they're like this? Remember, you want to, number 1, make eye contact. Not because you're mad, just because you can, and that's your child you love. So until next time, this is Kyle Ellen. I'm an artist, singer, songwriter, author, and until next time, I'm going to be out singing somewhere. Goodbye.